Guys, I got some good news for you. Out of all the MCU movies, Thor Ragnarok is the best of the Thor movies. Thor Ragnarok stars Chris Hemsworth, Tom Hiddleston, Cate Blanchett, Anthony Hopkins, and is directed by Taika Waititi. What's up, guys? We have another MCU movie. We usually get like 2 a year now. Thor Ragnarok is one that I was super excited for just because I'm a massive Hulk fan. Let's get that out of the way. Hulk is my favorite comic superhero. I've reviewed The Incredible Hulk twice. I had to do a revisited review just because I wanted to go into that movie further. And that movie seems to be the bastard stepchild of the MCU, but yet it's still my favorite MCU movie. When I see people doing rankings of the MCU movies, they tend to put The Incredible Hulk like near the bottom, which is fine, opinions and all. I don't get it though. It's such an engrossing and emotional film, and it's very different in tone than the rest of the MCU. It seems like the later MCU movies have favored more on comedy, and you can't blame them. You know, they're really, really successful. Thor Ragnarok might be the funniest out of all the MCU movies.
No, I won easily.
Doesn't sound right.
Well, that's true.
Or it might lean the most in the comedy department. There is very little dramatic content in this movie, actually. But we'll get into more of that later on in the review. But first, let's talk about the story. At the beginning, we see Thor has been captured, or he kind of set up his own capture so he could take down Surtur, who is this demon-looking god. He's kind of the mortal enemy of Odin. And he looks pretty badass. Right away, you can tell the tone they're going for with this because Surtur, he has this really kind of demonic cadence in his voice. And then all of a sudden, he's broken up because Thor is spinning around and he can't see him, so he says, hold on, wait until I come back around to you. So that was like the first big joke of the movie, and it was okay. But when Thor gets back to his home planet of Asgard, shenanigans happen and he gets exiled. And he gets exiled to Sakaar, which is a planet where they have these gladiator type battles. And of course, if you've seen the trailer, you know that Thor has to battle the Hulk. And that's one of those what if type scenarios everybody always talks about. If the Hulk was in a fight with Thor, who would win? Or if he was in a fight with Superman, who would win? To me, I don't think anybody could beat the Hulk because the angrier he gets, the more powerful he gets. And so that power really knows no limits. Once Thor gets like his lightning power, I guess we'll call it, this is something we haven't seen in the previous Thor movies. Then Thor becomes like, you know, a god. Like, we know that he's a god, but in the previous movies, you know, he's getting in fights with like Iron Man and Captain America, and they're holding their own against him. But when Thor really like gets his full power as a god, that's when he gets really dangerous. Which is interesting because this is when his hammer, I'll call it Mew Mew, was taken from him. But I guess the message here is that he doesn't really need the hammer. It's about what's in here and what's in here. But I must mention Cate Blanchett. She plays Hela, who happens to be Thor's sister. And she became too powerful and was cast out by Odin. But so she comes back, and of course she wants, you know, planetary domination. And Cate Blanchett, we all know she's a fantastic actress. You know, within like the first 20 minutes of this movie, I was thinking Hela's gonna be a badass villain. But unfortunately, her character kind of withers away. And I know I'm kind of getting into the cons already, but oh well. So anyway, let's talk about the pros and the cons of Thor Ragnarok. First off, this movie is funny as hell. I found myself laughing my ass off through most of this movie. One thing that works so well about it is there's so many standout characters in this, which is a huge plus in my book. First off, Jeff Goldblum, the legend. You know, Jeff Goldblum, he was wasted in Independence Day Resurgence. In this movie, he more than makes up for it because the guy steals every single scene that he occupies. You can't not laugh when he is on screen. He's a natural comedian. And Thor Ragnarok might remind you how funny Jeff Goldblum can be, because I was literally gut laughing during some of his scenes. Then you got this character Korg, who looks kind of like the Thing, and Taika Waititi actually plays the voice of Korg. There's such a juxtaposition between his voice and the way he looks. Before you hear him talk, you think that he's gonna be, you know, a certain type of character. But as soon as he opens his mouth, it's hilarious. And I think the reason it's so hilarious is because of the way he looks. But Taika Waititi is a natural actor, actually, comedic actor. And he's another one of those characters that every time he was on screen, I was immediately drawn to him. And also, I got to talk about Chris Hemsworth. This is an actor that, I hate to use the word disappoints, but, let's face it, the other two Thor movies, most people are going to say those are the weakest of all the Marvel movies, or the MCU movies. They're still enjoyable, but, everything that he does outside of the Thor movies is less than stellar. There's just something about him. Maybe he's just too good looking or something, and he doesn't take a lot of risks as an actor. In this movie, he does, especially in the comedy department. He's having to hold his own against heavyweights like Jeff Goldblum. And he's really funny. And he's the main character of the movie, of course, and he does such a great job, actually. I was really impressed with Chris Hemsworth in this movie. And more importantly, this movie made me more interested in the character Thor. And that's a big plus. Now, as far as any cons, if you notice, I haven't really mentioned the Hulk, who happens to be my favorite comic book character. I prefer my Hulk to be more of like an emotional type of character. There's a lot of depth that you can explore with Bruce Banner, and they don't really do that with this, and that's fine, I guess. They tend to want to have more fun with the character, but as far as like comedy that fell flat, mostly it was with the Hulk. And I guess maybe that's why they tend to not try to make standalone Hulk movies that often, because he is a really hard character to nail down. And, a lot of people like myself hold the character sacred. So it is painful when you can't represent the Hulk the way you would want to. I mean, I'll even say, even in the first Avengers, I didn't care for what they were doing with the character. He did have some really nice standout moments, especially with Loki. But overall, I didn't get that emotional impact that I wanted from, like, say, the Edward Norton Hulk movie. That movie really showed off, the emotional impact that the character has and the struggle that Bruce Banner goes through, constantly fighting these demons and wanting to avoid turning into the Hulk, and it's so great. But none of that was in this movie, so that was kind of the big con for me. But luckily, everything else outside of that was great. It's definitely one that I'll watch again. It probably is like, in the upper middle as far as ranking goes for the MCU movies. This was one of the good ones, and I'm definitely going to give it a high purchase worthy. So anyway, guys, that is my review for Thor Ragnarok. What are your thoughts on this one? Looking forward to hearing them. And also, where do you rank this one as far as the MCU movies go? Looking forward to hearing your rankings. Also, come over to Killer Flicks, where we talk horror all day and every day. And on Fridays, we do Free For All Fridays, so we can talk about Marvel and comic book movies. Maybe talk about what's going on with Fox, possibly being bought out by Disney. That's another whole video. Also, if you like what I'm doing, hit that subscribe button. I'd really appreciate it. Follow me at Drumdums on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Have a great day, and Drumdum out.